Hey everybody, Mungo Dark Matter, and today I thought I'd do an overview and review of Cloud Supply, which is a new virtual instrument for Kontakt. It's part of the Play series by Native Instruments, and it's a layered sound type of instrument. So we have an A and a B sound, and the two can be blended. There's a balance over here to the left, which blends. The more to the left you go, the more A becomes dominant, or the A sound. The more you go to the right, the more the B sound does. So you can go all the way to the left and only have the A, or all the way to the right and only have the B, and everywhere in between is some variation of the two. Alright, so we have up here at the top sound, and so if we click on sound, it gives us both the A and the B sound, and we have a bunch of different parameters that we have up here that we can change, including the waveform, shape, the LFO. So we can sculpt each sound. Now there are default sounds that they already have built on here, which is nice. So you can start out from a default sound, or you can start out from scratch pretty much. Also, the overall patch of both sounds, they have presets for that as well. So there are plenty of presets in here to experiment with and to use as a starting point. If we go over here to the next option, we have effects, and so we have an effects chain in here which affects both of the A and B, but we can change any of the effects. So we have reverb here. We could change this to a phaser, for example. So we can change any of these. So we have 6 different slots here to put sounds in. As you can see, the first one here has nothing in it, so it's only using 5 on this particular preset. So we can close that. And then the third thing what we have up here is a sequencer, which is really cool. For instance, this sound patch, some patches have sequences in them and some don't, just like you have on any synthesizer virtual instrument. A lot of times they'll have patches that have a sequence in them if they have a sequencer. So if we just hit a key, that's the sequence to this particular patch. You can actually also turn off the sequence, and it will just be a single tone. So even if you have a patch and you decide you don't want the sequence on it, you can turn the sequence off. And if you have a patch that doesn't have a sequence, you can add a sequence to it. The cool thing about this is you just kind of click and drag. So if we want to alter this, we can alter any of these things by just dragging it. And the nice thing also is, if you see here, as we click and drag it, it tells us what the interval is that we're dealing with. So if it's an octave plus a minor seventh, and so on. You can set the root key for the sequence and the scale. So you have multiple different scales, like major and minor, and blues major, blues minor, and so on. So you can, it's a really nice sequencer actually. You also you can change the velocity on these particular things. Now this note didn't initially go off because the velocity was down to 0. So if I play this again, so we can vary the velocity between any of the notes as well. And as I said, if you bring the velocity all the way down, that actually turns the note off. So if they're all the way up, you'll have you'd have every note in there. If they're down, it doesn't sound the note. You can change the number of steps. Right here we have 16, but if we change that, we drag this, we can change the number of steps in the sequence as well. this is actually one of the nicer sequencers I've seen in various virtual instruments. I've used different sequencers, both software and hardware, and although a lot of them are really pretty flexible, it takes a certain learning curve to learn them, and sometimes it's kind of complex to figure out what's going on, so you can spend a couple of hours trying to figure out the interface. This is a relatively intuitive interface, so if you mess around with it a little while, you're going to pick it up a lot faster, I think, than a lot of the other interfaces on many other sequencers that are a little more complex. And then finally, I guess we have the macros here, where you can set to these knobs that are on the bottom that change stuff like delay and reverb and crush. You can change, you can add what's to it. Like the default delay has just delay, but you could add something else to the delay down here. For example, you can assign this stuff. Also, you can change this curve up here. This is just kind of the standard curve up here, but you can actually drag this up if you wanted like a swell in the middle, or if you want it to go a little less at the first and go more at the end. You can change the way the knob responds to it. So that's a nice feature to have if there's a reason you want it to like swell in the middle or such, if you're changing the knob while you're playing something, and so on. So those are like the main features of this. Now, the other thing which is really cool is, say you want to design your own sound and you don't want to sit and go through each one of these things, or you don't know how to start and such. There's a little thing down here. This is a randomizer, and it randomizes the layer sound sources. So right now you can see we have Jupiter and Windy City. If I roll the dice, it changes them. Now it keeps the same preset right here, but you can save this to a different preset. Unless you saved it to that preset, it wouldn't go up there. And so you can save this to a different preset. Now, one thing you can do also is you can go and you can start out with Cloud Supply initial ISO, which is kind of a default type thing. So we have Aereo and Airwalk here. We don't have any sequence for it because it's just kind of a default start. It does not have many effects here. It just kind of has some standard, I guess this is the standard kind of bass thing that it starts out with, but you can add whatever you want in there. And here are the sounds that are in here, and we can change those sounds, as I said before. So if we go down here, we can hit the dice and it will change the sounds. That's a kind of nice combination. If we run again, it switches it again. If we hit it again, changes it again. That's a kind of interesting sound sample. It's called Neil Armstrong, who is, of course, the first person to set foot on the moon. Ironically, we have Apollo. That was Apollo mission that he was on. Apollo shows up here in Galileo. So, as you can see, you can randomly start this way. You can add effects to it in sequences as well. So if we go up here to the presets, like on many virtual instruments, you'll see it tries to split things up. Usually you will have lead in most presets, and sometimes you'll have bass as well, effects. Pad is another pretty common one, at least for native instruments. The one that's missing from here, which I wish there was a category on here for this, it doesn't have ARP or sequenced category. So they're mixed all throughout this. So you don't know which ones are ARP and which ones are sequenced or whatever. So having an ARP or sequence category is a real nice feature in presets, because a lot of times you are looking for a sequenced sound particularly, and so you can go to it. And so that would be my one complaint with this plugin, is I really wish it had a sequenced or an ARP area in it. But it does have lead keys. I'm not even sure what the difference between keys and lead would be on that. I mean, to me, it almost seems like those would be synonymous. Effects are obviously sounds that are more like sound effects and such. Organ is an interesting one, because these are actually organ sounds down here. So if we go here, sounds like an organ. So that's an interesting category to put there. Things sound like an organ, although I think I've seen that before. I'm used to seeing things that are more like lead and bass, because and ARP, because those are things that you look for a lot of times. You want to have like an arpeggio type sound, or you want a bass type sound, or you want a lead type sound. So those are three that are very important. This also does not have bass listed in it, but there may not really be any bass sounds in here, so that might be why it's not in here, because it's not intended primarily as like a regular synthesizer where you would have lead and bass so much. Although there may be some bass sounds in here, I don't recall any in particular. So there are quite a few presets in here. I think there are like 140, 150 in here. So there's a lot to mess around with in the presets themselves. And like I said, once you get the preset in there, you can mess with the balance between the two sounds, and you can mess with the effects on the sounds to make them your own. And you can actually create a sequence or change the sequence if there is a sequence in it. And just one last thing, just to remind you, there's the randomizer. So if you're messing with sounds and you want to come up with a unique sound, it will actually randomize the A and the B sound. It will pick up out of presets that they already have. You can customize each of those too as well. So this is a very customizable instrument as far as sound goes. You can customize it in many ways along the sound chain and in between the layers as well. I'm Mungo Dark Matter, and this has been Dark Matters. And whatever you do, enjoy the day, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.